America is living in a headline culture. We don't read the full article. We don't watch the full debate. We just see that 30-second clip. And that same problem is creeping into retirement planning. Soundbites like the 4% rule always works or Roth IRAs are always superior. These things spread like wildfire on the internet. But the reality is it's far more complicated than this. In this episode, I'm going to show you why short form advice is dangerous and how to think long form about your retirement plans. Hey everybody, I'm recording this 8 days after the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I really wanted to speak on this last week. But I was recording last episode literally the day after it happened, and I just needed a little bit of time to process it because, listen, I'm not a political podcast, okay? I'm not going to come out here and act like I know everything about politics or know everything about Charlie Kirk's beliefs. But I just feel like I've had some time to process some things, and I'm kind of thinking about and observing the reactions across America with this tragedy, this awful event that happened to an innocent person who was standing up for his beliefs and speaking what his truth is, and was killed for it. And the reaction that I've seen on the internet, initially, I was very angry. Okay, because what would happen is I would go on social media, I would go on Twitter, now X, and I would get fed these little 20-second clips, 30-second clips of people that are celebrating his death. And I kind of thought a little bit about this, and I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why am I being fed this stuff? Because actually with Twitter, I deleted my Twitter account. I've since created a new account, but I have not posted at all. I don't post on Twitter. I don't react to anything. I don't like anything. I don't follow anybody on Twitter. I simply use it to see what those trending news stories are. But it was wild that Twitter was feeding me these reaction clips that were posted mostly from the other side that disagrees with the reactions that were being had on these particular videos. And you've probably seen them. I don't need to tell you what's going on, but you've probably seen a lot of these reaction videos where people have been celebrating the assassination, saying he deserved what he got because of his beliefs. And I got to really processing this a little bit more. And I think the issue we have in America, not only in America, you can go look across the world, but I care about our country. I care about our people here in America. I'm an American. My dad was an immigrant to this country. He loves America. My mom was born in America. She loves America. And I want my children to grow up in a country that they are also proud to be in. So I'm going to talk about America. And I think, or I believe, I should say, that the number one issue we are having with regards to politics today is that we live in this short form media consumption. People are scrolling the internet. They're doom scrolling. I think this is what my nieces and nephews call it. They doom scroll. They sit on the couch or they sit on their bed and they doom scroll. And the algorithm is feeding them content that is going viral. And the question I would have is, the question I ask myself is, what content is not going viral? The content that is kind of lukewarm, in the middle, okay? Which, by the way, most of America is somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning a little bit left or leaning a little bit right, but overall kind of moderate viewpoints overall. That's where most of America sits. But that content does not go viral, and therefore it is not pushed in the algorithm. You're not going to see that content, okay? You're going to see the content that is extreme, whether it's extreme left or extreme right. And I got to realizing this because I was scrolling through Twitter. And like I said, I don't follow anyone. I don't like anything. I don't do anything on Twitter except observe. And here I'm getting fed all of these videos. And initially I was super angry. I was like, who are these insane people that would ever react to the assassination, a public assassination of someone just because of their beliefs, that just because we have differing beliefs. And oh, by the way, this is what makes America amazing. This is one of the reasons I love America is we have freedom of speech. We can agree to disagree. Okay. So like another question that I have is like, who is parenting these kids to not understand that in the world, people have all different kinds of beliefs. Okay. Based on personal experiences or things that they're consuming or their current situation or circumstances, people are going to have differing opinions. But the term agree to disagree, it seems like that's kind of lost on people these days. But the reality is, I was angry at these reaction videos. But then I kind of realized this is a very small minority of America. I'm telling you right now, because I've had conversations about not only this issue, but issues in the past with my friends that have different political views than me, okay, different religious views than I do. And I just know, just based on my small sample size and my little world, my little bubble, that the majority of America does not believe this, does not feel like this. But here we're getting fed this content. We're made to believe that everybody on one political side is feeling a certain way, reacting a certain way, and everyone on the other side is reacting a certain way. And I think this is a massive problem, obviously. And this is a big reason I'm so anti-social media. Okay. Obviously, I use social media for business, keep it up with my friends, posting pictures of my kids so my friends and family can see them. But what media, social media in particular, has turned into with these kind of this short clip world where people just watch that short clip and they rush to a conclusion. This is doing so much harm. And one of the things that really resonated with me, because, truthfully, I'm no political podcast. Like I mentioned, I don't know a ton about Charlie Kirk other than over the last week, I've been diving into a lot of Charlie Kirk's content because I'm just like, I want to hear why people are so angry about what Charlie Kirk said while he was living and why these people would ever defend someone actually killing somebody in public, someone who is a father, someone who is a husband, someone who is an entrepreneur that is pouring their heart and soul into the mission that he or she believes that they are called to do while they're on this earth. And I just wanted to pour into some of that content. And it was very, very eye-opening for me, okay? Because I got sucked into this too. I had my own opinions about Charlie Kirk because of short form video. Okay. I would watch these short clips and it kind of seemed like, this is years ago when I first discovered Charlie Kirk, but it kind of seemed like very combative, very, not wanting to hear the other side. But watching some of those videos, some of the long form videos on YouTube, okay, some of his podcasts, watching some of those videos, he's inviting conversations from people on the other side that have beliefs that are different than his. But again, I'm not going to get political on this one. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting, one of the pieces of content that I thought was very interesting, and I'd highly recommend, regardless of where you sit in the political side, is Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California, one of the most liberal states in the country. Gavin Newsom has a podcast, and he is one of the only people on the left that does podcasts, political podcasts, that is an actual politician, who is an actual politician. And he invited Charlie Kirk. I believe it was his first guest ever on the podcast. So Charlie Kirk sat in his studio in January of 2025, of this year, and they had over an hour long conversation. I'd highly recommend going back to consume that content. Go to watch that video. And it was very eye-opening because one of the things Charlie said, okay, like I said, I'm no political expert. I'm no Charlie Kirk fan. It's just, I'm kind of observing as an individual that loves America, cares about the future of America. But listen to what Charlie said. This quote, I wrote this one down and I want to share this with all of you. Charlie said, quote, part of the problem with the Democratic Party, like I said, I don't want to get political, but part of the problem with the Democratic Party is that Democrats cannot survive in long form podcasting environments. It's too unscripted. It's too masculine, honestly, end quote. Gavin Newsom responds. He says, what is masculine about podcasting? And Charlie responds, he says, go into the wilderness with no rules, duel it out, see who's better, see who's stronger. And he asked the question, he said, who in the Democratic Party is actually going on long form podcasts? Maybe Bernie Sanders. And Gavin actually joked and said, well, maybe RFK when he was a Democrat. Okay. But here was the quote that I thought was so spot on. And Charlie said, if you want to earn the respect of forgotten America, you have to show them you can intentionally joust with no script, no hard breaks, no producer in the ears, no teleprompter. That's where new media is going. Social media, so that's the end quote. Social media, and this is what I'm talking about here, has turned these headlines, okay, kind of that headline culture into these short clips, these short video clips for these viral moments, because they know these people are smart individuals, not just politicians, but also financial talking heads, mainstream media, whatever, you name it, you name a business, people know how to work the algorithm. they hire smart people that know how to work the algorithm. And so these short clips are convincing people that they either hate the other side or, why they believe a certain way because everyone else, also believes that. Why would anyone disagree with them? Because they're being fed certain content that they agree with. And it's kind of like, it almost sucks people into this silo of never seeing the other side. That's why I love this interview, Gavin Newsom and Charlie Kirk. These people are completely different from a political standpoint, but they sat down and had a little over an hour conversation. And truthfully, it was kind of eye-opening to me because I'm like, Gavin Newsom, is he actually a Democrat? I don't know. I'm watching this podcast and I'm like, it almost seemed like he agreed with more of Charlie Kirk's points than he actually disagreed with. But either way, go watch the video. I thought it was very telling. But I think Charlie's quote at the very end captures why I think there's so much perceived hate and divisiveness in this country that I actually don't think is a reality. If you actually sit down with people and have real conversations about what's going on, whether it's politics or religion or sex or money, whatever it might be, I think you can kind of realize, I think you will come to realize that I think we have a lot more in common than the media, social media is leading us to believe. And obviously that got me thinking, how does this relate to retirement planning? Okay. Before I jump into that, I just want to say I pray for Erica, Charlie's wife. I pray for those two girls and what they are currently going through. It's an awful tragedy that no spouse should ever have to go through. No child should have to ever go through, but this is their new reality. And I just pray that good comes from this. I don't know what that looks like. Listen, I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know how or why, but that's what I pray is that good is going to come from this awful tragedy. But bridging to retirement, I had to bring it back to retirement plan because at the end of the day, this is a retirement podcast. I need to toe the line to a certain degree. But I got to realize, listen, we live in a soundbite society, right? And, one of those things is like, how are these sound bites? How are my clients? How are my listeners, whether it's podcasting or YouTube, how are they being affected when it comes to planning for their retirement? So I wrote down several things that I believe are these viral clip moments that I know you've been consuming. Okay. If you're watching this YouTube video, if you're listening to this podcast, I know you have been exposed to these things, and whether or not you believe it, this is seeping into your subconscious that you might believe these are truths. So I'm going to address these things, and we're going to talk about each one of those and how I might kind of challenge that method of thinking, okay, that way of thinking, in hopes that you can kind of rethink or reframe how you are planning for and executing successful retirement. So the first one I'm going to put out here is the viral clip that Social Security is going bankrupt. So take it as early as you can, because it's not going to be there if you wait. Now, this truth is part true, part false. Okay, let me explain what the actual truth is. This whole concept is based on an annual Social Security trustees report. So every year, the Social Security trustees get together, they review the trust fund. The Social Security has a trust fund that helps shore up any gaps with funding Social Security. So most of Social Security is funded through payroll taxes. Okay. So folks that are working, they pay into payroll taxes, employers pay into payroll taxes, and that is used to actually pay for retirement benefits, Social Security benefits for those individuals on Social Security. The trust fund is there to shore up any gaps. And if nothing changes from now, 2025 is when this is recording, up until 2034, the trust fund will be depleted. So this has resulted in many people, financial talking heads, folks that are social media influencers, going out there talking about Social Security going bankrupt, Social Security running out of money. So take it as early as you can. And this advice, I think, has definitely creeped in to retirees' thought process. Okay, to hopefully, if you're watching this episode or listening to this episode and you've been following our content for a while, you know how I feel about this one. It's all the answer. For spoiler alert for all of these is it depends. Okay. It depends. It may make sense to take Social Security early, but it might make sense to delay. But let me just make a quick bold prediction on this one. Something's going to change before 2034. Okay. And it's probably going to happen very close to 2034. It's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. It's probably not going to happen in the next election cycle in 2028. It's probably going to happen very close to 2034, because that's what politicians do. They kick the can down the road because nobody wants any accountability. But the reality is Social Security is mostly the largest form of guaranteed income you're going to receive in retirement. So wouldn't it make sense to maximize this? And wouldn't it make sense to coordinate your decision with things like longevity concerns or withdrawals in your portfolio, whether or not you have the assets to bridge the gap and delay Social Security, okay? Survivor spouse benefits, so survivor benefits on Social Security. How does that impact your claiming decisions? Doesn't it make sense to coordinate all of those things in the context of your overall retirement plan and then make the best decision? Obviously, you're not going to know if it's the best decision until you're gone, because no one knows how long you're going to live. And so therefore, the only right answer to claiming Social Security is to know exactly when your life expectancy is going to end. And you don't have that luxury. I don't have that luxury when we're serving clients. So you can do all the modeling you can, but there's also a behavioral aspect as well. But I think this idea that Social Security is going bankrupt, Social Security is going to go away is totally false. It is there for the clickbait. It is there for the headlines, for the social media short form content. It should not be considered when it comes to the overall context of your retirement income plan. Number two, never pay off your mortgage. Invest the difference. What I'd say to this one is there are no guarantees. Okay. And I think thankfully, many of you PFR Nation, you know how I feel about this one, is that there is the qualitative and the quantitative. The quantitative is dependent on what interest rates are. And right now, with interest rates being north of 6% a year, even quantitatively, it might make sense to pay off that mortgage aggressively. But even when rates were low, even when rates were 2.5%, 3.5%, or even 4% a year, quantitatively, you could probably invest in that side fund and not pay off your mortgage. But maybe qualitatively, it gives you that sense of accomplishment. It gives you that sense of fulfillment, being debt-free in retirement. And if that's adding value to you, if that's giving you peace of mind in retirement, I'm all for it. I've had this conversation for years with clients, especially when rates were low. The common question was, hey, Kevin, should I just invest these funds? Should I pay off the mortgage? I have this lump sum. I got this inheritance. What should I do with the mortgage? And the answer is not only the quantitative side, what can you return on the side fund relative to what your interest rate is, but it also is a qualitative question. It's also a behavioral question. Okay. So don't just go by the headlines and just say, I'm going to just keep this mortgage as long as possible and invest the difference, because that may not be what is best for you. And it may not be what is best for your spouse if you're married or have a partner. Or number three is spend 4% of your portfolio and you're going to be in great shape. You know, PFR Nation, how I feel about this one. Okay. So first of all, what is the 4% rule? If you're new, the 4% rule, Bill Bengen did some back testing all the way back into the 1920s. And he had the criteria of what is the starting rate of withdrawal for a retiree that first year in retirement, and thereafter adjusting for inflation each and every year. What is a scenario where that individual never ran out of money, at least for 30 years? So the portfolio lasted at least 30 years. And the answer, the worst case scenario, was someone who retired in October of 1968. Basically, on the cusp of two major bear markets, as well as hyperinflation in the 70s and 80s. So I guess what I want to do is I want to reemphasize that this 4% rule is not a rule of thumb, okay? And Bill Bengen has admitted this, and he's talked about this before. I'm not bashing Bill Bengen or his advice. I think it's legendary, and it's definitely helped me use this as a benchmark when I'm talking to clients, because a lot of people know what the 4% rule is, at least directionally what it is, okay? But what you may not know is that the average retiree actually experienced spending a 7% rate of withdrawal starting that year one in retirement, okay? And so 7% versus 4%, that's a significant difference. Imagine if you had a $2 million portfolio, 4% rule says you start with $80,000 withdrawal. 7% rule says you start with $140,000 withdrawal. That's a $60,000 a year difference, or $5,000 per month difference by doing a 7% rule versus the 4%. Now, there are some caveats to that. Obviously, if you start with 7% and you go through a downturn, you go through a bear market, you absolutely bring in the scenario of running out of money. No question about it. And that's why we've been doing some of these back tests on the YouTube channel. If you've missed some of those back testing, our last 3 videos on the YouTube has been about back testing hypothetical rates of withdrawal. But what I'd say to this one is, one of the major downsides of the 4% rule is that it assumes a sustained increase in inflation every single year. And we know oftentimes what happens in retirement is, let's say you retire at 60 or 62 even, and you plan to delay Social Security until full retirement age, or maybe until 70. So maybe there's a 5 or even 10 year window. I call this the bridge period, from when you retire up until you start claiming Social Security that you don't have any guaranteed income. And so therefore, you might rely a little bit heavier on portfolio withdrawals during that bridge period than you will later on in retirement once that Social Security income kicks in. Or once the spending stages kick in, meaning early in retirement, the go-go years, you might be spending a little bit more than the no-go years when you're in your 80s or 90s. So I think this idea of the 4% rule being the rule of thumb and just implement the 4% rule and you'll be fine, it might result and will very likely result in significantly underspending throughout the duration of retirement, which for the folks that we serve, that's not what they're interested in doing. Okay. They want to maximize enjoyment of retirement. They want to maximize fulfillment, and they want to see their financial legacy not only passed on when they're gone, but also potentially their beneficiaries, whether it's charity or family members, grandkids, actually experiencing that legacy while they're alive. We call it giving with a warm hand versus a cold one. Okay. This next one, I'm probably a little bit biased on this one, but the fourth one is don't hire a financial advisor because they can never beat the market. Okay. I think there's a big misconception that financial advisors, and I'm talking about 2025, not talking about the 90s or the 80s, but there's a misconception in 2025 that financial advisors are being hired to manage investments only and attempt to beat the market. This cannot be further from the truth. Now listen, there are many advisory firms out there, many advisors that try to actually tout performance. Ken Fisher being one of them. All right. But what I'll say to you is this, PFR Nation, you have to be in one of two camps. There are only two camps to fall into this one. There are advisors who are solely dedicated. They're dedicating all of their time, effort, and energy to try to beat a certain benchmark. And we know, and personally I know based on my experience in observing these individuals, it is impossible to do year in and year out for a long, sustained period of time. And as someone who's approaching retirement or has recently retired, you might have a 20, 25, 30-year horizon. And maybe you do or did have an advisor that was attempting to beat the market. And maybe they got a little bit lucky for a period of time, but then all of a sudden the tides turn and now their underperformance totally erased that outperformance that they may have had over that 1, 2, or 3 year period. So we just know it is a fool's errand to try to do this, but there are advisors that are still attempting to do it. The other camp, and this is where I fall personally, these are advisors who are dedicated to helping clients manage investments with a prudent strategy, but they're focused on comprehensive retirement planning. Okay. You cannot do both. The latter, like I mentioned, I fall into this camp. My job from an investment perspective for my clients is I'm trying to fully capture the market for them, not trying to beat it. Okay. And we know based on the Dalbar study every year, Dalbar, third-party research firm, they put out this study every year. And every time it's put out, it shows that investors' actual experience from a return standpoint lags the actual funds they invest in. A little confusing. So you would think if an investor had a certain fund or ETF, mutual fund, whatever it might be, they should get the performance that fund has delivered over the course of 1, 3, 5, 10, 20 years. It's never the case. There's always a lag between what the retail investor experiences versus what those actual funds deliver. And the only conclusion on this one, this is based on my personal experience, is that we're emotional. Okay. We are emotional creatures. We're not robots. We're not AI. And because we have emotions when it comes to our own funds, that impacts our decision making. So my job as an advisor, as an objective third party, is to help our clients implement an investment strategy that aligns with their risk tolerance, their risk capacity, and get them the long-term returns they need to make retirement successful, whatever successful means to them. Okay. But outside of that, outside of the investments, advice on Social Security, advice on pensions, advice on distributions of income in retirement, advice on order of withdrawals in retirement, advice on tax planning like Roth conversions or IRMA mitigation or Social Security taxes, estate taxes, tax loss harvesting, tax gain harvesting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Advice on legacy planning, estate planning, advice on insurance or behavioral financial issues like fear of spending or fear of running out of money, fear of going through a bear market early in retirement or sequence of returns risk, fear of a long-term care need. Okay. These are the things, in my humble opinion, addressing these things are far more valuable than trying to chase returns and trying to beat the market. So therefore, I fall into that camp number 2. I want to get my clients the market returns based on the risk tolerance that they have and the returns we need to make their retirement successful. And I want to focus on those other areas of retirement planning that are sometimes quantitative, but oftentimes qualitative, but add far more value over the duration of a relationship. Okay, number 5 on my list here is Roth IRAs are the holy grail, so convert aggressively before taxes go up. All right, so I hate to name names, but Ed Slott is a massive influencer in the financial advice world. And I respect a lot of the work that Ed Slott does. Okay. I've seen Ed Slott. I've seen him speak at conferences, webinars, really since back in my early days in Northwestern Mutual. Okay. But his message has always been taxes are going to go up. So always do Roth, convert. Never do traditional 401ks, never do traditional IRAs, and just go all tax-free. And I'm telling you, this advice by Ed Slott has brainwashed many financial advisors, many financial influencers, legacy mainstream media, and now ultimately that's trickling into the end user, you the consumer, you the client, okay, or the retiree. Because these advisors, these financial influencers over the last 13, 14, 15 years have fallen into that hype of taxes going up, the narrative of taxes going up. Well, guess what? Taxes went down in 2018, and now those tax brackets have been made permanent. So if you were going under that advice 10 years ago, you very likely overpaid in taxes significantly because tax brackets actually went down over the course of the last 12 to 15 years. But I'm telling you, there's a time and place for doing things like Roth conversions. Okay. I've talked about this on my YouTube channel. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I like to use the Roth conversion window, which is after you retire, where your earned income goes down basically to zero or near zero up until when other income starts, whether it's Social Security income or required minimum distributions or maybe some sort of pension. I'm reviewing a case right now. My buddy sent this to me, and he said this client is so hell-bent on leaving a tax-free legacy to his son and wants to convert his entire IRA to Roth. But the math just doesn't add up at all. It's actually going to hurt him and his son significantly. Okay. So what I'm saying is there's a time and place for Roth conversions, but they're not for everybody. And I think this idea that it's become so mainstream has definitely kind of fed this narrative. And a lot of the folks that reach out to us and contact us, this is one of their top concerns is, hey, Kevin, how much should I convert and when should I begin? And I'm like, well, let's actually go through the financial planning process. Let's talk about your goals. Let's talk about your income needs. Let's talk about your investment strategy. Let's talk about your lifetime tax bracket and how that's going to change over time. And then let's talk about your legacy goals. Okay. Whether it's charitable goals or legacy goals for your children or grandchildren. Then we can develop a plan and back into if conversions make sense. And if they do, the timing of those conversions and how much you should be converting and for how long. Okay. And so listen, I guess I would leave you with one final thought on this one is that these rules for Roth conversions were not in place until 2012. Okay. 2012 is when I believe maybe it was 2011. That's when they changed the rule where anybody, regardless of your income, could do Roth conversions. And I guess what I'd say here, maybe this is my cynical point of view with Congress, but Congress is rarely going to do something from a tax perspective that isn't designed to line the pockets of Washington. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, what a great deal. Instead of these baby boomers that were retiring at the time, instead of deferring taxes, defer, and then leave those to their heirs, and then their heirs can then stretch those IRAs for their life expectancy, why not get these baby boomers to pay taxes now? Let's implement this Roth conversion rule to allow anyone to convert to Roth. That's when this came about. All right. And it was a similar time frame looking at the deficits with Social Security and Medicare. So just kind of do the math is look at this. I think in addition to that, this is also a few years later when they changed the rules with these stretch IRAs. They're trying to bait people in to doing Roth conversions because that means more tax revenue now than they otherwise would have received if individuals, retirees, just deferred taxes, maybe just took out those required minimum distributions, just took out what they needed for retirement income instead of going so aggressive and converting. Not saying Roth conversions don't make sense. Okay. Like I said, we recommend Roth conversions all the time. All right. But what I'm saying is, just like all these retirement planning points, it depends. It depends on your goals. It depends on your situation. It depends on so many factors outside of these viral clips of taxes are going up. So go Roth. Don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. All right, we've got 3 more here. Number 6, I'm going to lump these all into one category, but stay away from life insurance, stay away from annuities, and stay away from long-term care insurance. I decided to lump all these into one because they're all insurance products. And this may be a little controversial for some of you that are listening, because I know there are a lot of anti-insurance people out there. But I've seen countless pieces of content bashing insurance products and the people who sell them, by the way, which by the way, I'm not one of those people who sell insurance products. So I'd like to look at myself as somewhat objective, but I guess I'm not really objective because I don't sell insurance. So therefore I should objectively be anti-insurance, but I am not. Okay. I do try to take a case-by-case viewpoint on all 3 of these products. But the question I want to ask is, why do you buy insurance? My answer to that is for peace of mind. It's not because you're buying insurance because you think something is going to happen, but because if it did, the ramifications are so great that it would drastically impact your loved ones. That's why you buy insurance. That's why I have life insurance, disability insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, okay? And for some of you, leaving legacy is important. And you want to leave money to your heirs, right? And for those people, it will inevitably result, for those of you that are interested in, and it's very important to leave a legacy, that could result in underspending in retirement. And for some of you, you're worried about being a burden on your loved ones. You want to protect them from having to care for you in your old age. So if you were to need long-term care later in life, by having long-term care insurance, it gives you that peace of mind knowing that, hey, I'm never going to be a burden on my loved ones. For some of you, you would have a legitimate panic attack if 100% of your income in retirement was dependent on what the stock market's going to do over the next 30 years. You would have a panic attack, even bonds. All right. So these are not math problems or financial optimization issues. It's a peace of mind play. And if those insurance products, whether it's life insurance or long-term care or annuities, provide you with some peace of mind, I believe they're worth every penny. So evaluate them, look at them with the cynical point of view. Okay. I think more importantly, if you could have a trusted third party that doesn't sell insurance products, but believes in where they fit, I think even better. I think it's a little dangerous to just walk into an insurance agent's office and ask them, hey, do you think I should buy long-term care insurance? Of course they're going to say yes. That's like walking into a car dealership asking, hey, should I, do you think I need a new car? Of course you need a new car. You always need a new car. Okay. But if it's going to provide some peace of mind to you that is useful in retirement, I believe peace of mind is one of the greatest gifts that insurance products can give, not only in retirement, but before retirement as well. Okay. This one's interesting. Number 7, the market always comes back. Just stay the course. And this might seem interesting because I do believe in this. All right. The market has always come back. All right. But here's the deal on this one. I oftentimes see DIY investors bury their heads in the sand when things get a little rocky, when things get a little bad. They love checking their statements, don't we all, when things are looking good, when we're in a bull run, the market's going up 5, 10, or 15% in a quarter. But when the downturn happens, they start throwing their statements in fire pits. Okay. That's literally what I've heard from clients. This results in a massive opportunity that they're missing out on. How about rebalancing your portfolio during times of volatility, buying the losers, selling the winners, and not only during bad years, but also good years to prepare for the next downturn? What about things like tax loss harvesting? The only time you have to build up the war chest for tax loss harvesting is when there's blood in the water. April of 2025, Liberation Day, 2022, the triple bear market, March of 2020, the pandemic, Q4, 2018, et cetera, et cetera. What about Roth conversions? If Roth conversions are ideal, we have times of volatility, maybe you have the opportunity to convert more shares with the same dollar amount. And so then when those shares do recover long-term, now they're sitting in the tax-free bucket versus the tax-deferred bucket. Or what about the income distribution phase? What if you're retired? Pulling from the right asset classes in retirement during those bear markets could literally make or break your retirement. If you're selling stocks in a fire sale during a downturn, when you're taking income out of your portfolio, that's not going to be ideal for you. Okay. But if you can have an income distribution process, that's going to help you weather the storm during those bear markets. Okay. So I guess my point in this one is, yes, markets do recover, but that sequence of returns risk is not just about the average returns during the duration of your retirement. I hear this all the time is, well, the S&P 500, earns 10% over the course of 30 years. Well, that sequence of how you receive those returns and the timing of that, it's very important. If you retire into a year like 2000, starting off the lost decade, probably not ideal for many situations. So you need to have a plan and process. Okay. So don't just bury your head in the sand. Have a plan, have a process before things get bad. That way, when they do get bad, you know what your action plan looks like. You know what you're buying, you know what you're selling, you know what your income plan is, you know what your tax plan is, and you can try the best you can to remove emotion from the process. Truthfully, this is, I think, a big reason why people hire our firm is they want to try to remove emotion from the process, and they know that they're emotional for their own money. They'd much rather hire a competent professional team to help them navigate the ups and downs of the market so they can spend more time with their loved ones, playing golf, traveling, and not worrying about the day-to-day with what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the markets, what's going on with tax legislation. Okay? Big deal. All right, number 8, the last one I have in this list, is taxes will be lower in retirement. So defer, defer, defer. So this is the opposite of the Ed Slott effect. Okay. And I've seen this for many, many years. Okay. I've seen, this assumption that your tax bracket's going to be lower in retirement. So therefore wait to do conversions, wait to do the Roth. But what if your tax bracket doesn't actually go down? It actually stays the same. Or what if it stays the same for a while and then all of a sudden you run into the tax trap of these IRAs and 401ks and those required minimum distributions kick in and you've been avoiding Roth conversions and now you have this tax trap that you cannot get out of. Okay. So this is super important. These little headlines. Okay. All of these little headlines, I think, have kind of bled into day-to-day retirement planning. They've definitely impacted the minds and the brains of advisors. And this is why I'm doing this episode on this, is because it's not just the end consumer, it's also advisors and how they're giving and delivering advice to the end consumer, you all PFR Nation. But I care about you, PFR Nation. I wanted to do this podcast episode because, it's not going to tell the whole story. These little clips, they spread like wildfire. They look really cool. They're kind of all doctored up on social media or even on YouTube shorts. But just like these political clips, they rarely tell the whole story. And if you make a life-changing decision based on one clip, it can cost you big time. All right. The truth is, most of us have way more in common than not politically. We all want safety, freedom, opportunity. We want just the regular freedoms, right? And financially, I think retirees all want the same thing too. They want freedom to spend time with family, freedom to travel, not worry about running out of money. Okay. And I think the problem comes when we stop listening to the full conversation, whether it's politics or in retirement planning, and we jump to conclusions or we jump to quick decisions based on these catchy headlines, based on these short form clips on social media, on YouTube. Okay. So here's my encouragement to you. Don't plan your financial future on headlines. Dig into the full conversation. Be open to other opinions, okay? And take time to look at your tax situation. Take time to look at your income streams. Take time to look at your investment strategy and your legacy plan, because just like politics, the long form version is where the truth lives for you specifically. And that's exactly why I started this channel, to go beyond the clips, help you build a retirement plan that actually works for you. And listen, if you're feeling a little stuck on this one, if maybe you've been doing this yourself for a long time, maybe you have an advisor and you're like, I just don't know if they can help me get through retirement, and you're feeling a little bit stuck. You're feeling like you're at a little crossroads and you want some help with this. You want a second set of eyes with this whole retirement planning thing. This is what we do on a day in and day out basis. We are here to help. If you're interested in learning more about working with our firm, just check out our website at www.imaginefinancialsecurity.com. Or you could just fill out the retirement readiness questionnaire that is linked in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to learn more about how we can help you, what your goals are, and see how we can help you to and through retirement. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next week, this is Kevin Lau signing off.